single dad, CEO, hired a black nanny, but froze. When he caught her twirling with his daughter like a real mum. Before we dive into this emotional journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you love heart-touching stories that celebrate love, healing, and strong women. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to know where my beautiful audience is tuning in from. Now, let's begin. The echo of expensive Italian leather shoes striking polished marble filled the sprawling glass office like a warning bell. Sharp, precise, cold. Logan Pierce, 30 years old and already worth more than most men make in 5 lifetimes, sat at the head of a long mahogany table. His steel blue eyes scanned the resume in his hand with all the warmth of an Arctic wind. Another candidate. Another waste of time. He exhaled, annoyed, tossing the paper onto the stack of rejections beside him. "Next," he barked. His assistant opened the door slowly, with a hesitation born from experience. Every interview this week had ended in tears or fury, and she wasn't eager to see another train wreck. But then Naomi Bennett walked in. She didn't flinch at the sound of Logan's irritated sigh, nor did she shift nervously under his gaze like the others. No. Naomi entered with a calm dignity that could silence chaos. Her long, thick braids were pulled back in an elegant twist, framing a face both soft and unshakably strong. She wore a simple blouse, tailored slacks, and a flick of red lipstick so bold it dared the world to challenge her worth. Logan's eyes narrowed. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. Naomi sat before he could invite her to. She crossed her legs at the ankle and folded her hands neatly in her lap. Her posture said, "I know who I am." "Do you?" Without lifting her gaze, she said, "I understand you've had difficulty retaining a nanny." Logan's lip curled. "Difficulty implies the problem lies with me. I'd say the problem is with women who think childcare is about hugging and story time." Naomi arched an eyebrow. "It's not." He looked up from her resume. "You have a degree in child development and a master's in trauma-informed education. But you worked in the inner city. That's not exactly transferable to someone like my daughter." The words stung, but Naomi didn't let it show. "Children are children," she said, "no matter how expensive the wallpaper is." Logan snorted, flipping through the pages. "Let me guess, you think love can fix everything." "I think love is a start," she replied evenly. "Structure, consistency, empathy, those are the tools. But yes, love is part of the equation." He looked up again, this time holding her gaze with a mocking tilt of his head. "You think you're going to come in here with your confidence and your little red lipstick and fix what 10 others couldn't?" Naomi smiled slowly, not sweetly, not submissively, but like a woman who'd heard worse and lived to thrive. "I'm not here to fix you, Mr. Pierce," she said. "I'm here for the child." The room went silent. The sound of the city buzzing behind the tall windows faded, replaced by a new current, a shift in energy. He leaned forward, his tone sharpening. "You don't know anything about my daughter. I know she's had more nannies than birthdays. I know she's likely acting out, or worse, shutting down. And I know that if the person raising her doesn't feel safe, seen, or respected, neither will she." A flicker passed across Logan's face. His mask of arrogance cracked, just a hairline fracture. "But enough. You're quite bold," he said coolly. "I'm qualified," she replied, "and I won't apologize for that." Logan stood abruptly. Naomi rose too, standing firm, unblinking. He walked around the table, circling her like a predator trying to intimidate its prey. But Naomi stood still, his voice lowered, smooth like ice melting into water. I don't do sentimentality. I don't tolerate mistakes. And I don't believe in fairy tales where love conquers all. Neither do I, Naomi said. Fairy tales lie. But healing, that's real. And I've seen children bloom in the darkest places when someone believes in them. The door creaked open suddenly. Daddy? A small voice, barely louder than a whisper. Both Logan and Naomi turned. Ariana stood in the doorway in a lavender sweater dress, holding a worn teddy bear by the arm. Her eyes, so much like her father's, but softer, rounder, darted between them. Naomi dropped to one knee instantly, lowering herself to Ariana's eye level. Hi there, she said gently. I'm Naomi. What's your teddy's name? Ariana clutched it tighter. Mr. Buttons. Naomi smiled. Nice to meet you, Mr. Buttons. I like your dress. Purple's my favorite color. The little girl tilted her head, studying her. Then, with shy curiosity, she stepped forward and reached out. Naomi held out her hand, and Ariana took it. Logan watched, stunned. Will she stay, Daddy? Ariana asked, her voice hopeful for the first time in days. He cleared his throat. We're still deciding. Ariana turned to Naomi. Please don't go. Logan's heart clenched, a sensation he hadn't felt in years. Naomi stood, meeting his gaze once more. Her expression said everything. You can keep pretending you don't care, but she needs someone who does. He exhaled slowly, then nodded. Trial period, he muttered. Naomi extended her hand. For Ariana, not for you. He hesitated, then shook it. The deal was sealed, but what neither of them knew was that this wasn't the beginning of just another job. This was the first crack in a wall built too high, too long. A wall ready to fall. And the woman who had walked in just to do her job would end up changing everything. The early morning sun bled through the grand windows of Logan Pierce's penthouse, casting a cold gold light across a home too silent for a child to truly grow in. The walls were lined with pristine art and untouched bookshelves. Ariana's toys, carefully stacked in expensive bins, sat untouched, like ornaments, not objects of joy. Naomi had returned the next day for her trial. Logan didn't greet her. He simply handed her a list of duties and walked away, his crisp suit brushing past her like wind off a glacier. Follow the schedule. Don't deviate. I don't do improvisation, he said over his shoulder. Naomi read over the page, a regimented, joyless plan that scheduled Ariana's life down to 10-minute intervals. Breakfast, reading, piano, French vocabulary, outdoor time, supervised, lunch. Nowhere did it say play. Naomi folded the page and slipped it into her purse. Her eyes trailed to the hallway where she could hear the soft hum of cartoons playing. She walked slowly, her heels making muted clicks on the marble floor. And there she was. Ariana sat curled on the edge of a plush cream sofa, legs tucked under her, staring blankly at the screen. Mr. Buttons rested in her lap, one ear nearly torn. Good morning, sunshine, Naomi said softly. Ariana turned slowly. Her eyes were tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of being unseen. You came back, she whispered. I said I would. Other nannies lie. Naomi knelt beside her. Well, I'm not other nannies. Ariana blinked. Her eyes shimmered with the quiet hope of a child still waiting to be proven wrong about the world. Naomi reached into her tote and pulled out a children's book with hand-drawn illustrations of little girls with braids and brown skin and wide smiles. Can I read to you? Ariana nodded. As Naomi began, Ariana leaned against her shoulder, slowly relaxing with every word. For the first time in a long time, she felt something strange. Safe. An hour later, Logan passed through the hallway, glancing into the living room. He froze. Ariana, his daughter, usually silent and guarded, was laughing. He narrowed his eyes. Naomi was twirling her fingers in the air, animatedly mimicking a butterfly from the book. Ariana mimicked her, giggling. Logan cleared his throat loudly. Ariana stood straight instantly, her smile fading. Naomi stood as well, composed. "We were just reading." "I thought I gave you a schedule," Logan said coldly. "Reading is on it," Naomi replied, and Ariana responded better to a butterfly voice than French grammar drills at 8 a.m. He took a step forward, his jaw tightening. "I don't need creativity. I need structure." "And she needs warmth," Naomi said. "She's not a project, Mr. Pierce. She's a little girl." Before he could snap back, Ariana suddenly ran forward, past him, and grabbed Naomi's hand with both of hers. "Daddy, don't make her leave." Her voice wasn't a plea. It was a protest from a child who was finally waking up from a long sleep. Logan hesitated, his heart twisted at the desperation in Ariana's voice. "I didn't say. I want her, not someone else. Her." Logan turned to Naomi. "You've been here a single day." "And in that day," Naomi said gently, she felt seen. He hated the truth in her words. He looked at Ariana, so small yet so certain. Then at Naomi, still calm, still grounded, not begging, not flinching. He sighed, eyes narrowing. "Fine," he said, "but this isn't a victory." He leaned in closer to Naomi, his voice low and bitter. "Don't expect respect here. Do your job. Stay invisible." Naomi tilted her head, as if examining him. "I'm not here for your respect," she said softly. "I'm here for Ariana. That's enough." The words hit deeper than she knew. He turned and walked away, silence in his wake. Later that day, Naomi sat with Ariana in her room, walls painted pale pink, decorated with glittering stars that looked expensive, but soulless. "Why don't you ever draw, sweetheart?" Naomi asked, spotting the untouched art supplies. "No one looks at them," Ariana replied. "What's the point?" Naomi leaned forward and placed a blank sheet in front of her. "Draw it for yourself." She sat quietly as Ariana picked up a crayon, hesitantly at first, and then with more confidence. Ariana drew a tall figure with blue eyes and a frown. Beside him, a little girl, and beside the girl, a woman with long braids and a smile. "Is that me?" Naomi asked softly. Ariana nodded. "I drew you happy." That night, Naomi walked past Logan's office to grab Ariana's sweater from the coat rack. She overheard his voice through the open door, low, irritated. "Tell the agency I won't need another candidate. Against my better judgment. This one's staying." A pause. "And if she starts expecting special treatment because of her sob stories or skin color, I'll replace her myself." Naomi clenched her jaw. But instead of confronting him, she returned to Ariana's room, tucked the girl in, and whispered a silent promise over her forehead. "No matter what her father thinks, you'll be loved." She knew what she was up against: arrogance, ignorance, and ice walls built around pain. But Naomi had faced worse in life. And now she wasn't just a nanny. She was a warrior in the quietest of battles, one that would change not only a child's life, but a man's soul. The mornings in Logan Pierce's mansion were as predictable as they were frigid. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm cinnamon rolls filled the marble halls, yet no warmth lingered in the air. Naomi stood in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, preparing a breakfast that would go untouched. Again. Logan entered like he owned the air itself. Sharp suit pressed, ice-blue eyes, unreadable. He barely glanced her way as he passed through the dining room. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce," Naomi offered, her voice steady, kind and purposeful. He didn't stop, didn't nod, didn't speak. He simply picked up his black coffee and walked out. Naomi exhaled, her lips pressing together. She was used to cold shoulders, but this man's silence was arctic. Still, she didn't let his indifference touch her spirit. Later that day, Naomi braided Ariana's hair in the sunlit sitting room, soft music playing in the background. The little girl giggled as Naomi gently tugged her curls into neat, stylish braids. "You're a queen," Naomi said, holding up a mirror. Ariana's eyes lit up, like Mama used to say. Naomi's chest ached at those words. She kissed the top of Ariana's head. "Then we'll make sure you never forget that." As they braided and laughed, the cold mansion began to feel different. There was music in the air now. There was color. There was joy, slowly seeping into the corners of a house that had forgotten how to breathe. But Logan noticed, and he didn't like it. He caught them once, Naomi and Ariana twirling to soft music in the hallway, Ariana's laughter echoing like bells through a cathedral. He scowled. When Ariana hugged Naomi, he stepped in sharply. "Ariana, enough! You're clinging!" he snapped. The little girl's arms fell to her side. She looked down. Naomi stood, slowly and protectively placing her hand on Ariana's shoulder. "She's not clinging. She's connecting." Logan's eyes flared. "You're not her mother." Naomi didn't flinch. But she needs someone who acts like one." Silence. He turned on his heel and walked away. At dinner that evening, Naomi made a hearty southern stew, a recipe her grandmother taught her. She set the table with care, placing a bowl before Logan's usual seat. When he entered the room and saw it, he sneered. "I don't eat comfort food," he muttered, pushing the bowl aside. "It's nourishment," Naomi replied softly. "And love." "I didn't ask for either," he said without meeting her eyes. She didn't argue. She turned her attention to Ariana instead, gently helping her cut the cornbread on her plate. Ariana smiled, cheeks warm with affection. For Naomi, that was enough. Over the next few days, the rhythm continued. Logan dismissed her presence, criticizing everything from how she folded towels to how she organized Ariana's bookshelf. "You're not running a daycare," he snapped one afternoon, watching her teach Ariana with flashcards and songs. "Stick to the basics. Reading, writing, no singing." "She learns better through joy," Naomi said, unbothered. "She needs discipline. She needs life." Their arguments were quiet but fierce. Naomi never raised her voice, but she never backed down. And Logan, for all his arrogance, began to feel something he didn't expect when she stood her ground. Uneasy. One night, Naomi tucked Ariana into bed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Miss Naomi," the girl whispered. "Yes, sweet pea." "I used to have dreams where Mommy came back, but now I dream about you." Naomi's throat tightened. "Dreams are special. They tell us who makes us feel safe." Ariana snuggled under her blanket. "You smell like cinnamon and sunshine." Naomi chuckled gently, blinking back tears. "And you smell like crayons and cookies." Meanwhile, Logan watched it all unfold, like a man standing outside a window, looking in. He heard the laughter, the bedtime stories, the morning songs, the warmth in the hallways. He didn't understand it, couldn't explain it. But slowly, subtly, he noticed something. Ariana was smiling again. She had stopped doing that after her mother's death. Her eyes had dulled, her laughter had faded. She became a quiet, drifting shadow of a child. But now, she danced in the hallway. She hummed while colouring. She spoke up at dinner. Naomi hadn't just brought warmth into the house, she had brought life. And Logan, for all his bitterness, began to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Jealousy. Not of Naomi's bond with his daughter, but of how effortlessly she brought light into places he had left dark. One morning, Logan lingered at the dining table longer than usual. Naomi placed a steaming cup of fresh ginger tea in front of him. "It's good for stress," she said. He didn't respond. But this time, he didn't push it away either. He stared into the cup like it held answers he wasn't ready to hear. Naomi turned to leave. But before she did, she paused. "You don't have to be made of stone, Mr. Pierce, especially not around her." He didn't look up. "Being soft doesn't win in this world." "Maybe not in business," Naomi said, "but it wins hearts. And your daughter's heart. That should matter more than all your millions." She left the room in silence. And Logan? For the first time, he didn't scoff. He simply sat there, still, staring into a cup of tea, and wondering why her words felt like truth, wrapped in warmth. The day began with rain, tapping against the windows, like a soft whisper from the sky. Naomi moved through the mansion with quiet steps, carrying fresh laundry to Ariana's room. The hall was unusually still, and the usual hum of Ariana's voice wasn't there to greet her. She opened the bedroom door slowly. Ariana sat at her little desk, her head bent over a piece of paper. She didn't notice Naomi at first. Her small hand gripped a red crayon tightly as she dragged it across the page in hard, angry strokes. Her brows were furrowed, not in concentration, but in frustration or pain. Naomi knocked gently. "Sweetheart," Ariana startled and quickly flipped the paper over. Naomi sat beside her. "What were you drawing, baby?" "Nothing." "Ariana," Naomi reached out gently. "It's okay to show me." With hesitation, Ariana turned the paper back over. Naomi's heart clenched. It was a drawing of a stick-figure girl with a frown, standing beside a man with blue eyes and a jagged, broken heart between them. The heart was cracked down the middle, a bolt of lightning drawn across it in crayon. In the corner was a smaller drawing, a woman with long hair and a halo above her head. "Is this you and your daddy?" Naomi asked softly. Ariana nodded. "He doesn't like me much," she whispered. "Not like he used to. Before Mummy flew to heaven, he held me more. He smiled more." Naomi wrapped her arms around her. "Oh, honey, your daddy loves you. He just doesn't know how to show it right now." Ariana looked up with tears in her wide brown eyes. "Did I break his heart?" Naomi's breath caught. She pulled the little girl tightly into her arms. "No, baby, you didn't break anything. His heart was already hurting. Sometimes when people lose someone they love, they forget how to love what's still here." Later that day, Naomi passed through the staff quarters and found Mrs. Whittaker, the housekeeper, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes and tired hands, folding linens. "Mrs. Whittaker," Naomi said gently, "may I ask you something?" The older woman looked up, tilting her head. "Of course, dear." "What happened to Mr. Pierce? I mean, before he became this cold?" Mrs. Whittaker sighed and set down the towels, her eyes glazed over with memory. "He wasn't always like this," she said quietly. "Logan used to laugh. He adored his wife, Caroline. They were sweethearts since college, met at a charity auction. Would you believe that?" Naomi listened, her heart tightening. She was everything he wasn't, Mrs. Whittaker continued. Soft, soulful, a lover of music and sunlight. She painted the nursery herself, danced with Ariana in her belly. That house used to have music and joy. What happened to her? Naomi asked softly, even though she could already feel the answer. Mrs. Whittaker's eyes dimmed. She died giving birth to Ariana. Complications. Logan was at the hospital. He held her hand 1 minute, and then she was gone. Naomi swallowed hard. He blamed the world, then blamed himself. And eventually, he shut down, closed every window, every feeling, built walls around himself. Business helped him forget. Coldness became a shield. Naomi stared at the floor, her voice almost a whisper. And Ariana. He never blamed her outright, but he never healed enough to love her the way she needs. He's terrified, Naomi. Terrified to love again, because he thinks love means loss. Naomi nodded slowly. The pieces were fitting together now. The arrogance, the distance, the refusal to show affection. He wasn't born cruel. He was carved into cruelty by grief. That evening, Naomi entered the library and paused when she saw Logan standing at the fireplace, staring into flames. He looked like a man haunted by something only he could see. She was about to leave quietly when he spoke. "She's drawing again," he said without turning. "Ariana, I saw the sketchbook on the piano." "Yes," Naomi replied softly. "She's expressing herself. That's good." "Did she show you the one with the broken heart?" His voice cracked, almost imperceptibly. Naomi's eyes widened. "She did," he exhaled, long and bitter. "She thinks I don't love her." "She doesn't think that, Logan," Naomi said gently, stepping into the room. "She thinks you're hurting, and she's wondering if she's the reason." He turned slowly. His face was pale, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, those cold blue eyes, held something different. Regret, pain. "I never meant to make her feel that," he whispered. "She's all I have." "Then show her," Naomi said, "before the silence between you becomes permanent." Logan looked away, his jaw clenched. "I don't know how." "You don't have to be perfect," Naomi said. "You just have to be present." That night, Naomi sat on her bed, hands folded in her lap, tears welling in her eyes. She had come into this house expecting to care for a little girl. She hadn't expected to care for the broken man raising her, but now she did, because she saw more than his cruelty. She saw the hollow places where love used to live. And maybe, just maybe, she could help him find it again. Not for her, not for him, but for the little girl who deserved a father with open arms and a warm heart, and for a world that needed to see that love, no matter what skin it comes wrapped in, has the power to heal even the most shattered souls. The sun had painted the mansion in soft gold that afternoon, the way it used to in Naomi's grandmother's house back in Savannah, when sunlight filtered through lace curtains and made dust look like glitter. Naomi had just finished folding Ariana's laundry and was humming to herself as she walked down the grand staircase. From the corner of her eye, she saw Ariana sitting quietly on the couch, clutching her sketchbook, staring at the fireplace with a heavy expression far too grown for her 6 years. "Hey there, sunshine," Naomi called softly. Ariana looked up. Her eyes brightened. "Miss Naomi, can we dance today?" Naomi hesitated, glancing around the vast living room. "You want to dance in here?" The little girl nodded. "You promised to teach me the twirl like in the ballet book." Naomi smiled. "Okay, just for a little while." She pulled out her phone and softly played one of Ariana's favorite gentle tunes, an instrumental lullaby with piano and soft strings. Naomi bent slightly, held Ariana's hands, and they began to spin, slowly, laughing. Naomi's braids swirled with every graceful movement, and Ariana's black dress fanned out as she twirled. Their laughter filled the room like a warm breeze. It was joy, pure, unfiltered, and it shattered the mansion's cold silence like stained glass. Then it happened. The front door slammed. Ariana froze mid-spin. Naomi turned and saw him. Logan. He stood at the edge of the living room like a thundercloud in a tailored suit, ice-blue eyes lit with fury, jaw clenched, nostrils flaring. "What the hell is this?" he barked. Naomi straightened. "We were just dancing. This isn't a ghetto talent show," he roared. The music stopped. So did Naomi's breath. The words sliced through the room, sharp as razors. Ariana covered her ears. Naomi blinked, as if trying to absorb what had just hit her. Logan's words hung in the air like poison. A stunned silence followed, one heavy enough to shatter the floor beneath them. Naomi felt the tears pressing against her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she stood taller, steadied her voice, and looked directly at him. "Your hatred has nothing to do with me," she said, voice calm but trembling at the edges. "It's what's eating you from the inside." Logan blinked, as if slapped. For a moment, his expression faltered. Naomi turned to leave the room. Her hands were shaking. Her throat was tight. Ariana rushed after her. "Miss Naomi, please don't go." Naomi paused at the foot of the stairs, her chest rising and falling with restrained emotion. Ariana looked up at her with watery eyes. "You're my sunshine," the little girl whispered. "Don't take the sunshine away." Naomi's heart shattered. She knelt down, hugged the child tightly, and whispered back, "I'll never leave without saying goodbye. I promise." That night, Naomi sat in her room, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. She had held it together all day, smiling for Ariana, cooking dinner, telling bedtime stories like nothing had happened. But now she crumbled. She had faced prejudice before, but never like this. Never from someone she was starting to believe might change. She stared at the framed photo on her nightstand. Her mother's picture. A woman who taught her that grace didn't mean silence, that dignity meant rising even when the world tried to sink you. She whispered to the photo, "Mama, what do I do? Do I walk away from this pain, or do I stay for that little girl?" The answer came not in words, but in Ariana's voice echoing in her memory. "You're my sunshine." Meanwhile, in his study, Logan sat alone with a drink he hadn't touched. He wasn't thinking about stocks or mergers. He was thinking about Naomi's eyes when she looked at him. Not afraid, not angry, just disappointed. He heard his own voice replaying in his head. This isn't a ghetto talent show. God, what had he said? What had he become? He buried his face in his hands. He hadn't meant to say that. He had returned from a stressful meeting, already raw with anger over a failed deal, and he walked in on joy, something he hadn't seen in so long. It looked like a threat. But it wasn't Naomi who was the problem. It was him. The next morning, Naomi came down with Ariana's lunchbox, ready to take her to school. Logan stood in the foyer, guilt practically weighing his shoulders down. He opened his mouth to speak, but Naomi walked right past him. No eye contact, no smile, only silence. He deserved it, but still it hurt. He turned, watching as she knelt to help Ariana with her shoes. Ariana looked up and whispered, "Did Daddy say sorry?" Naomi brushed the girl's curls and answered gently, "Not yet." Logan winced. His daughter was watching. Learning. What kind of man did he want her to believe he was? Later that day, Logan stood outside Naomi's door, hand raised, ready to knock. He hesitated, then finally knocked twice. Naomi opened it. She was still in her uniform, hair in a loose braid, face calm but distant. "I came to apologize," he said. Naomi folded her arms. "Did you come to apologize to the ghetto talent show dancer? Or to the woman raising your daughter's spirit?" He exhaled. "To the woman who's teaching me things I should have learned a long time ago." Her eyes softened, just barely. "Go on." "I was wrong," Logan said, voice shaking slightly. "What I said, how I said it. There's no excuse. I was cruel. I've been cruel for a long time." Naomi stepped aside. "Keep going." He looked at her, vulnerable for the first time. "I see what you bring to this house, Naomi. Not just care, not just kindness. You've brought life back to my daughter. And he paused. "I've been too blinded by grief and pride to appreciate that." Naomi stared at him for a long moment. Then she said, "You want me to stay?" "Yes," he whispered, "but only if you want to." Naomi's voice was low. "I'm not staying for you. I'm staying for Ariana. And because I believe some hearts can still heal." Logan nodded. "I hope mine is one of them." The night was heavy with silence, the kind that feels thick enough to touch. Moonlight slipped like liquid silver through the tall windows of the Pierce estate, cascading across the marble floors and casting long shadows down the quiet hallway. Logan Pierce lay in bed, awake, eyes wide open, heart unsettled. Sleep had become a stranger lately. Just like peace, his thoughts raced, as they often did when the world went still. The echo of Naomi's voice, firm and full of truth, still replayed in his mind. "Your hatred has nothing to do with me. It's what's eating you from the inside." He swallowed hard. She was right. For the first time in a long time, someone had looked past the tailored suits and the stone exterior and seen the rot underneath. The wind brushed gently against the tall trees outside his window, and something made him get up. A pull, a sound, a feeling. He slipped on his robe, walked barefoot down the stairs, through the hall, and stepped out onto the back terrace that overlooked the garden. And that's when he saw it. In the moon-drenched garden, like a dream woven in soft shadows and starlight, there they were, Naomi and Ariana, dancing, twirling, alive. Ariana, in her nightgown, barefoot on the cool grass, was giggling with a joy that cracked something inside his chest. Naomi moved with grace and elegance, her long braids glistening under the moonlight, her red lipstick catching the faintest light like a whisper of defiance and beauty. Her laughter, deep and soft, floated up into the night like music. They spun together, motherless child and woman, with endless love to give. Logan couldn't breathe. The scene pierced his soul like a knife wrapped in silk. He gripped the railing of the terrace. And then, a memory. "Promise me you won't become cold," his wife's voice whispered through the veil of time. He could still see her, lying in the hospital bed, sweat on her brow, life slipping away even as their daughter entered the world, her hand clutching his, her eyes full of fissure. "Promise me." But he had become exactly that, cold, ice where warmth used to be, stone where a heart once beat. Logan closed his eyes. Shame crawled up his spine like frost. That promise. He'd shattered it. But tonight, that sound, that laughter, that dance. It was light breaking through the ice. Ariana twirled again, her arms stretched out like tiny wings. Naomi caught her mid-spin, and they both collapsed into the grass, laughing breathlessly. "I love you, Miss Naomi," Ariana said in a sleepy whisper. "I love you too, my little star," Naomi replied, stroking her curls. Logan had to turn away. The lump in his throat was unbearable. He walked back inside and leaned against the doorframe, rubbing his eyes. What had he done? He'd been cruel, not just to Naomi, but to his daughter, to himself. He had locked them all in a house without light, and somehow Naomi had brought in the sun. Back in the garden, Naomi looked up. She knew someone had been watching. She didn't need to see him. She could feel him. And though he didn't say a word, the air had changed. It was softer now, less sharp, less bitter. Later that night, Naomi tucked Ariana into bed. The little girl was exhausted, but her heart was full. Naomi kissed her forehead and lingered a little longer beside her, stroking her cheek. "You're safe, little one," she whispered, "even when it's dark." Logan stood outside the nursery door, listening. He didn't know how long he stood there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. The silence between them, the one that used to be cold and biting, was slowly becoming something else, something more sacred. Healing, perhaps. The next morning, Logan came downstairs early, earlier than usual. He didn't bark commands at the staff. He didn't ignore Naomi's presence in the kitchen. Instead, he stood quietly in the doorway, watching her braid Ariana's hair, the way she gently separated each section, the way her fingers moved with patience and grace, the way Ariana beamed with every twist. It wasn't just childcare. It was care. And Logan, for the first time in years, felt envy. Not of Naomi, but of the peace she carried within her. He walked over slowly. Naomi looked up, but didn't speak. He reached into his jacket pocket and held something out. A small music box. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "It was my wife's," he said softly. "She used to wind it when she danced in the garden." Naomi's eyes flickered. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for sharing that." "I saw you last night," he said. Naomi nodded. "I know." Logan met her gaze. "She would have loved you." Naomi swallowed the lump in her throat. Logan continued, his voice cracking slightly. "I broke a promise to her. But maybe it's not too late to make things right." Naomi stood slowly, her hands still smelling of coconut oil and lavender from Ariana's hair. "Redemption starts with one choice," she said, "and then another." Logan looked down, then back at her. "Then I choose this moment, to thank you, and to change." Naomi didn't say anything more. She simply nodded, and for the first time offered him a smile, not for who he was, but for who he might become. The morning air hung thick with quiet. No clanging footsteps on the marble floors, no barking orders from Logan, no sharp echoes of indifference through the mansion's sterile halls. Just silence, and the soft hum of something beginning to shift. Naomi hadn't come down for breakfast. And for the first time since she arrived, Ariana sat alone at the kitchen table, swinging her legs, her little brows furrowed in worry. Logan stood across the room, arms folded, watching. Something inside him tugged, hard. "Where's Miss Naomi?" Ariana asked, her voice trembly. "She's resting," Logan answered, his voice unusually gentle. He'd seen her earlier that morning, pale, sweating, barely able to sit up in bed. She had waved him off weakly, insisting it was just a cold. But it wasn't just the sickness in her eyes that stayed with him. It was the vulnerability and the ache in his chest that refused to go away. Logan wasn't the kind of man who stayed home. Not for anyone. His days were meetings, boardrooms, power plays, and acquisitions. That world obeyed him, feared him. It was the fortress he had built after his heart had shattered. But today, none of that mattered. Not when Ariana looked like she was about to cry. Not when the woman who had somehow thawed the ice around his daughter, and maybe his own heart, was upstairs, sick and alone. He rolled up his sleeves. He didn't know how to make soup, but he Googled it. Burned the first pot, sliced his thumb trying to cut carrots, but he kept going. The kitchen staff watched in stunned silence. Because Logan Pierce was cooking. Upstairs, Naomi's breaths were shallow. She drifted in and out of fevered sleep, unaware of the chaos unfolding below. Later that afternoon, Ariana sat curled up on the couch, a blanket around her and a storybook in her lap. "Daddy?" she asked, looking up at him. He turned to her, blinking. "Yeah, baby." "Can you read to me like Miss Naomi does?" Logan hesitated. He sat beside her slowly, took the book from her little hands, and began reading. His voice was stiff at first, uneven. But then Ariana leaned into him, and her warmth melted something inside. As he turned the pages, she laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh he hadn't heard in years. Hours passed, and when Naomi stirred in her bed, heart pounding and skin clammy, she could hear the soft hum of a story being read. She sat up slowly, steadying herself against the headboard. She tiptoed toward the door, cracked it open, and froze. Down the hallway, the nursery door was ajar. She could see them. Logan and Ariana, curled together on the rocking chair, the book still open, both of them asleep. Ariana's head rested on her father's chest. Logan's arm was wrapped around her protectively, and on his cheek. A single tear. Naomi pressed a hand to her mouth. It wasn't just the sight. It was the feeling. She hadn't expected this. Not from him. Not ever. And yet here he was, breaking open, softening in ways she didn't think possible. Her legs felt weak, not from the fever, but from the emotion washing over her. She crept back into her room and sat at the edge of the bed. She thought about all the days he had scowled at her, all the insults, the coldness, the blatant disrespect. But now, this was something else, a crack in the armor, a glimpse of the man he once was, maybe still could be. The next morning, Naomi awoke to a knock. She pulled on a robe and opened the door. Logan stood there, holding a tray, soup, tea, and a tiny vase with one white gardenia. He looked awkward, out of place, but his eyes, those icy blue eyes, were softer now. "I don't know how good it is," he mumbled, "but I tried." Naomi took the tray slowly. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse. He lingered for a moment, then looked down. "Ariana, she wouldn't stop asking for you. I read her that book you always do." She fell asleep, smiling. Naomi blinked, holding back tears. "She loves you," she whispered. "More than you know." Logan nodded. "She's teaching me how to love again," he replied. "So are you." That afternoon, Logan didn't go to the office. Instead, he cleaned the kitchen himself. Asked Naomi if she needed anything. Played board games with Ariana. And when Naomi finally made it downstairs, wrapped in a blanket, cheeks still flushed, he stood up and pulled out a chair for her. Like a gentleman, like someone who had started to remember what kindness looked like. The staff whispered behind closed doors. The housekeeper smiled. The mansion, once stiff and cold, now buzzed with something unfamiliar. Warmth. And when Logan passed Naomi in the hallway later that evening, he paused. "I was wrong," he said softly, "about a lot of things. Naomi looked up. He held her gaze. "You're not invisible, Naomi. You've always been the light in this house. I just didn't know how to see it." Naomi's eyes filled, but she nodded. "You see it now," she said. He nodded. And for the first time since they met, she smiled at him, not out of politeness or duty, but from something real. Forgiveness. And hope. Storms don't always come with thunder. Sometimes they walk in wearing tailored suits and expensive cologne, masking poison behind polished smiles. It began on a crisp Monday morning. Logan stood at the head of the grand conference room table, surrounded by stone-faced board members, the same men and women who had once worshipped his every ruthless move. Now their eyes held something colder, suspicion, and behind it, something worse, hatred. "Logan," drawled Vernon Chase, the silver-haired board vice-chairman with a hidden vendetta, "we've received complaints, unsettling ones." Logan arched a brow. "About what?" Vernon clasped his hands, lips curling into a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. "The nanny?" Silence fell. "She's been seen dancing in the garden with your daughter, laughing with you at family luncheons, staying overnight. It's not professional." Logan narrowed his eyes. "She lives here. It's her job." Another board member, Marlene Royce, an icy heiress who had always wanted her daughter to marry Logan, leaned forward. "The optics matter, Logan. A single black woman under your roof, so close to your child. People talk." He stiffened. "Let them." But Vernon wasn't done. "The rumor is she's trying to seduce you, secure her future. And frankly, Logan, the board is worried about your image, about the company." Logan's jaw clenched. He didn't believe it. Not truly. But something stopped him from speaking. A lifetime of power games, of swallowing feelings and avoiding public vulnerability. The fear of seeming weak. So, he said nothing. And that silence was a blade. Naomi stood at the door, unseen. She'd come to bring Ariana's drawings. The little girl had begged for Logan to see them. But what she heard froze her, trying to seduce you. The optics matter. A single black woman under your roof. Her hands trembled. Her heart crushed beneath the weight of humiliation. And when Logan didn't defend her, not once, not even a word, her soul shattered in a silence louder than any scream, she left the drawings on the floor, turned, and walked away. That night, Logan came home to silence. No warm meals, no humming from the kitchen, no braided-haired angel twirling in the hall. He frowned, loosened his tie. "Naomi?" No answer. He called again. Nothing. He walked upstairs, checked Ariana's room. His daughter lay in bed, eyes red from crying. "She's gone," she whispered. Logan's heart dropped. "What?" "She left, Daddy. She said goodbye when I was coloring. She kissed me and said, 'Be brave, my sunshine.' Then she cried and walked out." Logan froze. The words hit like a punch to the chest. He turned, rushed to Naomi's quarters. Empty, spotless. Not a single braid pin left behind. Only a note, one line. "Sometimes love means leaving where you're no longer respected." Guilt stabbed him like fire. Because he knew. She had heard everything, and he'd said nothing. Let them mock her. Let them stain her name. Let them tie her worth to lies. He was no better than them. Logan stood in the center of the hallway, suddenly feeling like the house was closing in around him. Her laughter was gone. Her strength gone. The light she had poured into his daughter, into him. Snatched by his cowardice, he slumped into the nearest chair, rubbing his eyes. "Daddy, Ariana whispered from the stairs, holding a small picture she'd drawn of Naomi, herself, and Logan together. "I want her back." He nodded slowly, brokenly. "I do too, baby." But this time, he couldn't just command it. This time he had to earn it. The mansion had never truly felt like a home. But now, without her, it felt like a tomb. Every room echoed with silence. Every corner ached with her absence. No humming in the kitchen. No braided silhouette dancing down the hall. No warm laughter swirling around like sunlight in the dead of winter. Just cold. Logan Pierce sat at the edge of his king-sized bed, the sheets untouched on the other side. His blue eyes stared blankly at the floor, the same spot Naomi used to place Ariana's artwork every morning. Now there was nothing but marble and shame. Down the hall, the once bright nursery had grown dim. Ariana no longer giggled when the morning light kissed her cheeks. She no longer twirled in her favorite dress. She no longer reached for her dolls. She just existed. Barely. "Sweetheart," Logan said one evening, kneeling beside her. "Want to play a game, like you and Miss Naomi used to?" Ariana looked at him with dull eyes. "No." "Okay, maybe a story." She turned her face away. "I don't want you to read." Logan swallowed the lump in his throat. "Why not, baby?" She finally turned back, and her tiny voice pierced deeper than any boardroom betrayal. "Because you let her go." The air between them turned heavy, and Logan knew. No amount of wealth or apologies or bedtime stories could fill the hollow Naomi left behind as past. A week, maybe more. Logan stopped checking the calendar. He buried himself in work during the day, but every night came with the same torment, walking through a house that used to be alive because of her. Then one night, he heard it. A muffled sob. He followed it, barefoot, in pajamas, no armor left to wear. The nursery door creaked open. Ariana sat on the floor, clutching something tightly against her chest. A red scarf, Naomi's scarf, still faintly scented with jasmine and cinnamon. Ariana rocked gently, her face buried in it, her tiny shoulders shaking with grief. Logan dropped to his knees beside her, heart cracking wide open. He reached for her slowly, hesitantly. She didn't push him away this time. Instead, she leaned into him, scarf and all, and wept. "I want her back," she whispered between hiccups. She made everything warm. Logan cradled her, eyes stinging. He finally understood. Naomi wasn't just a nanny. She was the heart of their home. The woman who taught a broken child how to laugh again. The woman who challenged a prideful man to feel again. And he had let her go. Worse, he'd stood silent while she was torn apart by the very people who feared her light. That night, Logan didn't sleep. He sat at the window, watching the moon cast its pale glow on the empty garden, the same place where she once danced with Ariana beneath the stars, where she brought joy to places he thought were long dead. He clenched his jaw, shame burning in his gut. He'd fought hostile takeovers, built an empire. But he had failed the only two people who ever really mattered. Naomi had come into their lives like a quiet storm, powerful, graceful, unapologetically herself. She had braided more than Ariana's hair. She had woven pieces of healing into both of their souls. And he had let his silence betray her. Logan stood. No more silence, no more fear, no more hiding behind status and steel. He needed to find her, not just for Ariana, not just for redemption, but because, for the first time in his life, he was in love. Redemption doesn't begin with a grand gesture. It begins in the stillness of a broken heart, whispering, I was wrong. For Logan Pierce, the man the world saw as untouchable, that whisper had grown into a roar, and he was done hiding from it. The morning sun rose behind the gleaming skyscraper that bore his name, the Pierce Tower, but today its reflection on the glass felt hollow. He stood in the executive suite, tie loose around his neck, eyes set on the long polished table where powerful men once bowed to him. Now they stared at him with thinly veiled disapproval. He'd called a televised emergency board meeting. Press cameras blinked red. The whole city would be watching. Let them. Logan's voice cut through the tension like ice. Before we begin, there's something I need to say. Vernon Chase leaned back, arms crossed. Logan, this is highly unorthodox. I don't care, Logan interrupted, his tone sharp and clear. He turned towards the camera. I know there have been rumors about a woman who worked for me. A woman who some of you mocked, slandered, and tried to destroy simply because she had the audacity to shine in a place that's grown far too dark. The room stiffened. Marlene Royce shifted uncomfortably. Logan pressed forward. Her name is Naomi Bennett. She is the most honorable person I've ever known. She didn't seduce me. She didn't chase money or power. She came into my home and brought love to a grieving child, strength to a broken family, and light into places I never thought could be reached again. His voice cracked just slightly, but he stood firm. I stood silent when I should have stood beside her. That silence was my greatest failure. The board members glanced at each other, unsure of what was coming next. Logan took a slow breath. To protect her name and to take accountability, I hereby resign as CEO of Pierce Enterprises, effective immediately. Gasps rippled across the room. The press exploded. Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters whispered furiously into microphones. But Logan was done with pretending. He removed the gold-plated Pierce pin from his lapel and placed it on the table. I'd rather walk away with my soul than stay and lose the only woman who ever taught me how to live. By the time he stepped outside the building, the sky had begun to cloud. But he had never seen more clearly. He ignored the swarm of reporters, climbed into his car, started the engine, and drove. He didn't have an address, only a memory. Naomi once mentioned her community center, tucked deep into a quiet part of the city, where children learned to dance and mothers found hope. It wasn't on any rich man's map, but he searched. For hours, street after street, block after block, until finally, there it was, a small brick building with a painted sign that read, "The Bennett Center for Hope and Healing." His heart thundered in his chest. He stepped inside. The scent of warm paper, crayons, and cocoa filled the air. Children laughed in the distance. Music played softly from a worn-out speaker. And there she was, Naomi standing at a long table, braiding a young girl's hair, her expression soft and focused. She looked beautiful, powerful, free. Logan felt like he couldn't breathe. For the first time, he wasn't the giant in the room. He was the one hoping for mercy. Naomi sensed him before she saw him. Her hands stilled, her body tensed. Then, slowly, she turned. Their eyes met. So much unsaid between them. So much too late. "Naomi," he said, his voice almost reverent. She said nothing, just stared, guarded. He stepped forward. "I defended you, publicly. I resigned from everything, because none of it matters. Not if it cost me." Her lips parted, but no sound came. "I was wrong. About you. About everything. You didn't just save my daughter. You saved me too." The children nearby quieted. sensing something sacred unfolding. Logan knelt. Yes, the ruthless billionaire knelt in a dusty community center before a woman the world tried to dim. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I'm asking you to let me prove. I'm learning to be the man you believed I could be. Tears welled in Naomi's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she asked one question. Why now? Logan looked up, and for the first time, his walls were gone. Because you're the first person who ever saw me. And didn't flinch. Silence fell like a prayer. And in that sacred quiet, Naomi reached for his hand. Love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it walks in quietly, on worn-out shoes, with eyes full of remorse and hands trembling with truth. That's how Logan came to Naomi that evening. Not as the CEO, not as the millionaire, not as the man who once barked orders from behind a glass empire, but as a father, a man, a soul undone. He stood outside the community center's garden, dusk painting soft gold across the sky. The same garden where children played by day, and where Naomi now taught them to grow something out of nothing. She was there again, hands in soil, heart in service. She didn't look up when she sensed him, but her breath caught. He wasn't in a suit, no cufflinks, no power tie, just a hoodie, soft jeans, and something crumpled in his hand. Ariana's drawing. He stepped forward, and then, without fanfare, he placed the drawing on the wooden bench between them. It was the picture Naomi had once found, the one Ariana drew with the broken heart between a man and a little girl, and now it had been taped together. And beneath it, a new drawing, the same father and daughter, but this time they were holding hands. And beside them stood Naomi, hair in braids, smiling wide. Whole. I kept it, Logan said quietly. Both of them. Naomi swallowed hard, her fingers brushing the paper. Why are you here, Logan? His eyes lifted to hers, shining with unspoken ache. Because I was wrong. About you. About everything. He took a shaky breath. I thought control made me powerful. I thought pain had to be hidden. I thought love was for fools. And I let my grief turn me into a man I couldn't even look at in the mirror. A pause. You taught me what love looks like. What it feels like, in the way you braided Ariana's hair, in the way you danced in the moonlight, in the way you stood your ground when I tried to tear you down. Naomi's lip trembled, but she didn't interrupt. I can't undo what I said, what I didn't say when I should have, but I can spend every day ahead of me proving I've changed. His voice faltered. If you'll let me. The garden fell silent. Only the rustling leaves spoke. Naomi stared at him, her lashes damp with unshed tears. She was silent for a long time. Too long. Then she stepped around the bench, closing the distance between them. You don't get a second chance because you feel guilty, she whispered. You get one if you've grown. Logan nodded. I have. She looked at him. Really looked. At the way he clutched that paper, like it was sacred. At the hoodie worn from worry. At the eyes that no longer held judgment. Only hope. And something inside her softened. I'm not asking for promises, she said gently. I'm not asking for perfection. He nodded again, lips trembling. I'm only asking, Naomi continued, that if we do this, it's real. That you don't love me because I made you feel warm, but because you finally understand why I had to shine, even when you tried to dim me. He reached out, brushing a single tear from her cheek. I love you, he said, because you taught me to. Naomi's face crumpled. She didn't say it back, not yet, but she leaned forward, rested her forehead against his, and whispered, "Then let's see who you are, without the walls." That night they sat in the garden long after the children had gone home. He held her hand. She let him. They didn't need declarations. Not yet. They just needed space to breathe the same air, in truth. Logan looked up at the stars and remembered his wife's last words, "Promise me you won't become cold." He hadn't kept that promise. But maybe, with Naomi beside him, he could now live it. Some love stories don't begin with butterflies. They begin with battle scars, silent prayers, and the stubborn heartbeat of hope refusing to die. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was real, and that made it more beautiful than anything a storybook could dream up. It had been months since Naomi returned, not as a nanny, but as a woman whose presence changed everything she touched. She didn't come back to fold laundry or pour juice into little cups. She came back as Logan's equal, as the woman who had once stood in his living room with tears in her throat and a spine made of steel. And now she stood beside him, hand in hand, as they prepared for a night that would rewrite their history forever. The grand ballroom of the newly restored Pierce Center for Empowerment shimmered with soft golden light. Chandeliers sparkled like diamonds in the sky, and music floated through the air like a memory reborn. The night was more than an event. It was a tribute to resilience, to womanhood, to black excellence, and to the woman who redefined what power truly meant, Naomi Bennett. Logan had made sure the invitations said it all, a night for queens, honoring the strength of black women and the legacy they build. Naomi had cried when she read it. She wasn't used to being seen. Tonight, the spotlight was hers. Reporters swarmed the red carpet, not for the usual socialites, but for the radiant woman in the floor-length gold gown, her long braids cascading like silk ropes, red lipstick glowing like fire against her skin. Ariana twirled beside her in a miniature matching dress, squealing with glee. And Logan, he looked nothing like the cold-hearted CEO of yesteryear. His eyes never left Naomi. The evening opened with speeches, and when Logan stepped onto the stage, the room fell to a hush. He stood not as a man of wealth, but as a man transformed. "This woman," he said, gesturing to Naomi, seated with Ariana in her lap, "taught me how to live." He paused, voice thick with emotion. "She came into our home when we were buried in grief. She stayed through my silence, through my cruelty, through lies whispered by people who feared the power of her light, and she didn't just stay. She rose, and in rising, she lifted us." Applause broke out. Some wept openly. "And tonight," Logan continued, "we celebrate her work, helping young black girls and single mothers find safety, opportunity, and self-worth. Something I now understand is the true legacy." He turned toward Naomi. "My daughter found her smile because of you." Ariana beamed, clapping her little hands, unaware that history was turning beneath her feet. As the music swelled, guests were invited to the floor. And there, beneath chandeliers and moonlight, Naomi, Logan, and Ariana danced, together. Not as nanny, father, and child, but as a family forged through fire. Ariana twirled between them, laughter echoing in every corner. Logan spun Naomi once, then caught her close. "I've never danced like this before," he whispered. She smiled. "That's because you were always dancing alone." They didn't need to say, "I love you." It lived in every look, every breath. But then, the music quieted. Logan stepped back. Guests stilled, Ariana gasped as he dropped to one knee, and from his pocket he pulled out not a diamond ring, but a small gold locket with a photo of all three of them inside. Tears streamed down Naomi's cheeks before he even spoke. "I don't want a perfect life," he said, voice breaking. "I want ours, every moment, every scar, every dance, every dawn. Naomi Bennett, will you marry me?" Naomi pressed her hand over her mouth. Then, slowly, she dropped to her knees, too, eye level with him. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, because you see me now. And I see you." Ariana squealed and threw her arms around them both. The room erupted into applause. Strangers clapped. Friends wept. And somewhere in the sky, a woman who once whispered, "Promise me you won't become cold," smiled down. They didn't just dance that night. They twirled into forever, and proved that no matter how broken a heart, love, real, relentless love, can still bloom in the ashes. Love doesn't see color, it sees character. True strength is found in kindness, and true beauty in the courage to stand tall when the world tries to look down on you. Black women are not just caretakers of homes, they're healers of hearts, leaders of change, and queens in their own right.